What is it, afternoon? Yeah, afternoon. Right, so before I get into this, I want to know, just a quick show of hands. Obviously, sales is setting, closing. Who struggles more with setting? And so booking calls. Okay, and what about closing?
Same.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to be talking about, obviously, closing today, but setting is obviously my thing as well. So just a quick introduction from me. That's me, looking a bit more professional than right now in the quality. My name's Matthew. I'm a sales coach, I'm a consultant, and I'm also a high-ticket fitness closer. So I close for fitness coaches as well, as obviously teachers. So that's my expertise. So in terms of like how I work with people, I'm not plugging myself, I'm just letting you know, but I either work with coaches directly, I train them, or I work as a consultant in their business to help their sales team increase their performance, all that good stuff. And from May 2024 last year to February this year, I had and owned and operated an appointment setting agency, grew it to a team of 2, basically full-time staff members, realised I actually hate it, and I shut it down, which was pretty brutal in terms of the finances. But during obviously the time of running my agency, I made about £400,000 in revenue for coaches. I helped quite a few coaches get their highest ever months in business through obviously coaching them, booking the calls for them, and obviously helping them close them. So, Jack will confirm this, but I absolutely love sales. We were up till 12:30 last night, and I was objection handling on the spot. It was a good laugh. I really enjoy sales.
On a night.
I'm a bit weird like that, but I love it.
So on a night, and you said do it sober.
It was good. But I just love sales. I like closing people. I mean, call me weird, but I like taking card information. I don't know if that's a bit sus, but yeah. But I like the process of obviously getting to know that person, getting to know their problems, and closing them. It's quite fun. And obviously the money, the commission, everything like that helps as well. I wouldn't do it for free. But to me, sales is all about change, right? It's getting people to change their internal state to create an external change. So a lot of you in here sell fitness, fat loss coaching, muscle building. Some people are stuck in a certain position for years, and it's your job to get them to see that, to get them to see the consequences of it, and help them change. So sales is all about change. So closing, I'm going to obviously talk about that, but to me, actually, you know what? I just want to know something first. How do all of you look at sales calls? Do you look at it as a sales call? Do you look at it as like a coaching call? And what is your viewpoint on it? Chat.
Opportunity
To
see if they're a right fit, but also to get to know them a little bit better as well. Ultimately, I like to look at it as if they have clarity to move forward, so if it's going to be a right fit with me or if it's going to be with someone else, but if they're making a decision, is what I would want them to do.
I like it. So does anyone here get nervous before a sales call? Just a show of hands. It's fine if you do. Okay, cool. The reason that you get nervous for a sales call is how you view a sales call. If you view a sales call as, right, they're coming to me for help, you're never going to get nervous for a sales call again. I have not been nervous for a sales call in, I don't know how long, but it's because of the way that you actually look at a sales call as, okay? If you go into a sales call and you're thinking about the money, you're thinking about taking their card information, you're thinking about the strike links, you're not going to close them. From an energetic perspective, it doesn't work, okay? So we need to change our perception of sales calls before we get onto the sales call to obviously close. And to me, sales is 30% energy and 70% skill set. Now obviously, it's good to have good energy, but you can't go onto a sales call and then I need to ask my wife with energy. You need to have actual skill set behind it to overcome the objection. But before we get to the skill set part of it, I want all of you to show up to a sales call, next time you go into a sales call, as the expert. You are the person that can cause genuine change and impact into someone's life, which is obviously cool. And on the sales call, you do need to be seen as that authority figure and not just someone who the prospect's going to have a chat with. Have any of you ever gone into a sales call and you pitched someone and they've said to you, oh, I didn't know there was going to be like a pitch or something at the end of it, and I thought this was just a chat? I've done it before. Anyone else? The reason that that's happened is because you haven't set what's known as the frame on a sales call, which has then led them to think it's just a chat. Okay? And sales calls are all about controlling the frame of the conversation and the interaction. So I'll explain what that means in a second after I just wet my throat a bit. So whenever you want to close someone, it relies on you being firstly assertive and in control of the conversation. So I'm giving you value now through a presentation. I'm controlling the conversation. It's me talking to you. I ask you questions, and and that's when you see that in a sales call. One is one is following, one is leading, and you need to go one is leading. And typically, if you get into a sales call, the person who asks the questions controls the conversation. So let's just take this into the DMs for a second. If someone slides into your DMs and says, what are your prices for a meal plan or a diet plan, they're controlling the conversation. The way for you to win in sales is to turn that back around, ask the questions, and control the conversation. So I'll just give you an example from a DM perspective. If someone ever messages you, can I have more information about coaching? How much is your plans? Those type of questions. One thing I always like to ask them, I know this isn't about closing, but I always like to say, okay, I'm more than happy to go over that, but before I do you mind if I ask you something? And the reason that I do that is because I'm taking back control of the conversation and setting them into my frame. So I'm leading the conversation, therefore. It's like a dance. Anyone ever watched Strictly Come Dancing? Or just me?
Unfortunately.
So you've got the person who's leading the dance at all times, and you've got the person who's following. It's typically a man or whatever, but we need to be the person that's actually leading the conversation. Okay? Not again, but off the back of that as well, you want to put the emotions at the forefront of the conversation and make the entire conversation about emotions. Okay? Now, people will never buy from you just because they want to lose £10. Okay? There's always deeper emotions behind them. So, does anyone want to be a volunteer? I'll pick someone around. Okay. Why did you come to this event today?
Because I would like to grow my online coaching business.
Okay. No, that's cool. And why do you want to grow the online coaching business?
Because I would like to create an element of freedom for myself and my family to operate a business in the way that I'd like to.
Okay, I love that. I'm big on freedom as well. That's one of my biggest values. When you say freedom, like, what does that look like?
Being able to choose my schedule when I work, when I operate, how I operate, and it's come from me.
Okay. What do you feel like that would allow you to do that maybe you can't do now?
So,
What do you feel like choosing your own schedule would allow you to do that you can't maybe do now, or to the extent you want to?
To spend more time with my kids and travel and.
Okay, I'll stop you there because I'm not going to dig
Yeah.
deeper. But can you see how it's just gone from wanting to show up to an event today to spending more time with your kids, being able to travel? There are always emotions and desires deeper than the ones that tell you. Always on a sales call, always. Now, the large majority of you, probably all of you actually in this room, is our fitness coaching. Now, with fitness coaching, it's a bit different because obviously you're all investing into Jack, or you're maybe thinking of it, you probably should. And with Jack or any other service that is B2B, the chances are you're going to get a return on investment. Okay? You're going to put this in, you're going to get that out. With fitness coaching, unless you coach, busy corporate sort of people, then they're not really going to get a direct financial return. So what we need to do is we need to make the emotion and the goal worth more to that person than them parting with the money. And it's the feelings that come attached to the end point that make it worth more than it already is. And fitness closing is purely built on emotional discovery and forefront of emotions. And the point of a sales call is to get them to sell themselves and sell themselves into taking action. Okay, we're not here to persuade people. Like I'll never sit there and persuade someone. I'll guide them. Okay, I will guide them to make a decision. Whether that's they work with me, whether it's they work with you or anyone else. That's what we're here to do. So how can we do that? I have a very simple framework that I follow for every single sales call. Okay, I don't have a script. I think if you have a sales script, you should probably leave. But I follow a framework every single time. Same call exactly. And I took a sales call with 5 minutes notice on a Friday morning before. And I had a text from my closing manager. I just woken up. I took a sales call, closed it half an hour after waking up, paid in full. And the reason I was able to do that is because I have a framework that I repeat through every single call. I don't wing it. I know exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to lead the conversation. So this is it. This is literally the same framework that I use. Okay. So the first step is to set the agenda and the expectations. So those of you who got to the end of a sales call and the prospect was surprised that you pitched them or they felt a bit offended, you most likely didn't do this. Okay. So I'll go into that in a minute. So I'll just give you an overview of the framework. So step 1, agenda and expectations. Step 2, point A. I really like this, by the way. This is coming clutch. Step 3, find out point B. Step 4, get them to sell themselves. The 5th step is to close. Okay, so I'll break this down to you one by one. So setting the agenda, right, on a sales call. Now, I don't think you need to build rapport on a sales call. I think you just need to set the expectations, set the agenda, and go for it. So the small details matter as well. Okay, so when you set the agenda, it needs to be done in a way that labels the expectations of the call and sets the frame to make the authority clear. Okay.
Just very quickly, why do you not feel like it's necessary to build rapport? Just at your.
Do you like your doctor?
Pardon?
You know your GP, your doctor.
I see different every time.
Do you like them? Do you care about them? Or do you care that they make you feel better when you get them?
I don't know. I see a different one every time. So it's, yeah.
So if you're setting calls and closing calls for yourself, like you're sending the DMs, you're booking onto a sales call, you've got rapport with them instantly because you spoke to them in the DMs, they've seen your content, they're hopping onto a call with you. I would probably argue if someone else is taking your calls for you, build up rapport. But I'm not sitting here saying build up like 5 minutes of rapport and like chatting about their day and stuff. I just mean like 30 seconds. Okay. So at the start of a sales call, they're like, oh, how are you? And then straight into it. That's rapport. Okay. I'm not saying like asking about their day and going on for about 5 minutes of obviously building rapport. So, good question. That was a good question. So what this does is it puts the prospect into our frame. Okay, so like I said, there's frames of conversation. If they fit into your frame, you're controlling the whole interaction. And what this does is it sets the expectations. Then when you get to the end of the call, they can't just go, oh yeah, I'm just going to think about it and get back to you. I'll cover that in a minute. But ultimately, what it paints out to be is a sales call. A sales call, isn't a sales call. It's a control conversation where you're either leading, so you're asking the questions, or being led, which is where the prospect's asking you questions. We don't want to do that. We want to do that. We want to lead at all times. Okay. If anyone ever asks me a question on a sales call, it's just deflect and ask the question back. I'll never answer a question on a sales call or prospect unless it's something to do with buying. Okay. Now, most people typically start, and I've seen this widespread across the industry. They start sales calls with a really weak frame, and they try to build rapport with prospects. They talk to them about their day for 5 minutes. They ask them about the weather, how their week is really. Respectfully, you don't need to do that. And the analogy I use with yourself is when you go to the doctor, do you care about liking that person, or do you care about that person giving you the solution to your problem? Which one would you care about more? Would you rather like someone more, or trust someone to give you a result more? Result? Fair enough. So, your prospects need 2 things psychologically in order to invest in you. Number 1 is trust that you're not a dick, firstly. That's quite important. But most importantly, trusting you that you can get them the solution. Okay, and in my opinion, liking someone is the job of marketing, not sales goals. I'm not there on the call to be liked, I'm there to help them get towards their destination. So, whenever I get onto a sales call, I'm just going to give you all this away for free. This is exactly what I say. And I can show you recordings of me saying this. I always say to the prospects that the call opens up, and you get the back and forth for like 2 seconds, and I say to them, look, with their name, the purpose of today's call is to find out about you, what you're struggling with, what your goal is, and what's ultimately keeping you back from achieving that goal. And the whole point of that is to see if and how we can help. Okay? Then what I say is, if I know I can help, I'll let you know what that looks like. I'll let you know how it all works, what it financially entails in terms of investment, and then we can talk about potential next steps going forward from today. Sound good? Now what this does is it positions you as the authority because you're telling them what's going to happen. If anyone wants this, I can send it to you so you don't have to rush to write it down. So we'll solve that later. But what this does is it positions you as the authority, lets them know the expectations, and it lays out the expectation of the interaction. Because it's like, if you don't give the expectation, towards the end we can talk about potential next steps going forward from today. They will hit you with, I need to think about it, because you've let them loose, essentially. This sounds really negative, but it's not that bad, I promise. What it does as well is it'll position you as the authority, set the expectation, and it lays out the expectation of the interaction. Okay? And it's not about being aggressive, it's about being authoritative. There's a very big difference between being blunt and being direct. Direct is that, blunt is just being a bit of a cock. Well, hopefully you don't think I am. I'm just direct. But yeah, so now that we set the frame, we need to move into what's the meat and potatoes of the call, which is the discovery process. Now, I absolutely love discovery. Right? I love it. Obviously, that's why I asked you why you came today. to show the power of it. So, point A, discovery. Okay. Now, people do not invest in improvement. They don't invest to get better. There's a saying that people either invest to run away from pain or run towards pleasure. Okay, which is obviously what I said here at the back. And no one really makes a change because I should do something about it. I should make more money. I should lose weight. They do it because the pain of them staying the same is so excruciatingly painful that they have to do it. And the only way we're going to ever find out how excruciating that pain is through discovery. Okay. So, what you need to do on a sales call, your responsibility is not necessarily to identify problems, but to dig deeper and find out the true emotional gravity behind the problems. So I asked you a question about like desire. Obviously, we didn't go into like the problem side of things there, but I mean, how many of you have gone into a sales call with someone and they've said, I just want to lose weight? Just anyone, hands up, yes or no? What did you do after they said they want to lose weight?
It's normally a case of like what you say. I start saying how much and why.
What do they normally say?
They never normally have a figure or a number for you of how much weight they want to lose, but I'm not really interested in that. I'm interested in why.
Okay. What's their why?
It's normally quite like shit, like not very deep to give a shadow. Well, you know, like I don't like the way I look, maybe, or like maybe I've got a little bit, or my clothes are tighter, or I don't feel as healthy. But there'll be a reason why there'll be something, you know, whether it's like them out of breath running upstairs, or maybe they failed a fitness test, or something like that. You know, there'll be a deeper why.
Good. Yeah, there's always a deeper why. And the point of point A discovery is to really extrapolate that why and really dig into it. So like if you think about a bruise, if you had a bruise in your arm and you poked it like lightly, it hurt. But if you proper dug the finger in and went for it, it would hurt a lot. Your job as a coach is to find how painful that bruise is deep down. Okay. And I always like to use the iceberg analogy. Now, I couldn't find a high quality vector photo of the iceberg, so we're going to have to deal with a 240p. Okay? But I'm not going to be a graphic designer, I'm going to be okay. So, I want to lose weight, right? Is always at the top. Then you've got, what example did you say?
What's that?
What example did you say about why?
About why?
You said that it failed a fitness test or something like that.
Oh yeah. So like, give a client example. Like she failed a fitness test last year with the police, and she needs to because she's on response, and she got battered for that, killed her confidence, all the rest of it. Like, so it was a big deal. Why to get fit, get strong, and then get leaner.
Nice, I like it. So, want to lose weight is always up there, and then down here, as you start to go further down, there's always a deeper reason why. Question for you: has anyone ever had a sales call and that person's cried on the call? Okay, which gent wants to explain?
I mentioned the daughter to her family about it, and she got teary real quick. Like, and it wasn't a prod; it was just like, you're a mum. Do you want to be a role model? Do you want to like how do you feel right now? And that immediate like emotional trigger like off of that, and yeah, so she was pretty close.
Okay, so that means that you probably got to there, the bottom of the iceberg. If I had to separate this into like 3 segments, we've got the tip, the middle, and the end. Where would, just as a general average overview, where would you say you get to every year? 1, 2, or 3? So, just show of hands, 1. Okay.
Not really a deep person.
So how about you being a deep person?
It's fair.
What about number 2? So like the middle of the iceberg, like, oh, I just want to feel more confident. Okay, cool. What about number 3? Anyone?
Occasionally.
Depending.
Not everyone has to cry, but it's just a general overview. Like, yeah, that shouldn't But yeah, so your job is to get to the bottom of the iceberg, okay? And behind every single problem your prospect faces is a deep emotional impact that we have to uncover, okay? And your job is to dig deep, because no one buys off surface level reasons like I try to lose weight, okay? And the emotions that you need to uncover are behind the questions that you haven't asked yet. Okay? So this is a question framework that I use myself to get to the bottom end of the iceberg, okay? So obviously, like I said, we have top, middle, bottom, okay? So there's top of iceberg, middle of iceberg, bottom of iceberg questions. Top of iceberg, identify the struggle, right? This is the first step. So, what's the main hurdle you've been facing right now that's stopping you from doing X? Okay, now the reason that we open with this is because there's no emotional loading behind this question. Okay, it's a very neutral, soft question to lean into. Okay, so that's the first step. Second step is to establish the timeline. Okay, I see. So, how long would you say that this has been going on for? Year, 2 years, a couple of months? Then, step number 3, once we've established problem and timeline, then we can start to dig and to get further down the iceberg, right? So we found the emotional bruise. Obviously they've been struggling to do X, Y, and Z, they've struggled for X amount of time. It's time to press it, and that is just digging into the pain. So you can say, so how much of an impact has that had on you emotionally, considering it's been 6 months? How's that made you feel? What sort of effect is it having? Is it impacting your confidence? Is it impacting your emotion, your relationships, your self-worth, whatever? And then, after we do that, step number 3, we can press for a consequence. Now, if no one has a consequence to not achieving their goal, they will not do it. You just won't. If there's no consequence to your actions, you wouldn't act at all. But if I said to you, right, if you don't do this, you're going to get shot in the face, you're going to do it because the consequence is there. Okay? If anyone needs to get to a position to buy, they need to have consequences attached to them not taking action. Okay, so I go back to you because you gave me a good example. Right? What happens if you stayed in the same income bracket, same level of time freedom as you do now, and your kids were growing up and you couldn't be there for them because you had to work all the time, or you struggling to get things to work?
Just go and get a permanent job again.
And how would that impact your relationship with your kids?
Be back on the tools, less time in the house, less freedom.
And what would that mean for your relationship?
Wouldn't be able to do the things that I've done over the last few years, go to be at activity plays and hospital visits or whatever that might be as well.
Okay.
Park.
What about in yourself? Like if you weren't able to be there for the nativities, going to the park with them, like how would that make you feel as a man?
I feel that I would be working against my values.
Okay, what are your values?
I want to lose family.
Okay, so would it make sense, in order for you to live up to your values, you need to do X, Y, and Z to get to X, Y, and Z?
Yes.
Okay, so notice how we went through the consequences then and always brought it back to him. So if you don't do this, you're going to get to a point where you define your own values and not spending time with your kids. So that's what's going to get you to act at that point. Okay. Now, the point A discovery is to, yes, collect information to find out things on sales calls and to get notes, but the true purpose of this is to get the prospect to a point of self-realization where they think to themselves, shit, I cannot stay the same, because consequence will happen. Okay? If I've had loads of sales calls before where people have been on the is it type 1 diabetes that you can develop? You've been overweight?
Type 2.
Okay, type 2. So I've had people on sales calls with me before who, if they carried on, would have type 2 diabetes, would have heart problems, everything like that. You need to get the prospect to realise, shit, I cannot stay like this. Because if they don't have that realisation, they're just going to stay like this for however long they want to. Okay, which obviously we don't want. Then stage number 2, or it's step number 3 actually, is point B discovery. Okay. Now, you cannot sell someone a solution until they are sold on the future that the solution will create, or even better, the future version of themselves that solution will create. So I'm going to bring it back to you. You mentioned to me that you want to get to a point where you're probably financially abundant, not worrying about anything at all. Time abundance, spending time with
It's
your
more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, man's rich. Nice. So you want to have time abundance to be able to enjoy with your children. So in order for us to I'm not going to say close you, but in order for us to actually close you, we need to get you to imagine a version of yourself that is time abundant, that can spend time with his kids, and put like a thin layer of glass between where you are now and where you want to be, and that thin layer of glass can only be taken away through the service that we offer. That makes sense? Yeah. Okay. Cool. But I basically just demonstrated this in that analogy. But to summarize it, the future needs to feel so real and compelling and close that they have no other choice to take action. How many of you have like client roadmaps, or like, let's say for instance you say to a client, oh, I'm going to work with you for 6 months, and then you give them like a roadmap, or like this is what we're going to do? Anyone, hands up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll pick on Bilal. Bilal, what does your roadmap look like? You're gonna have to speak up. I can't hear you. Okay. So when I close for other fitness coaches, one of the things that I do is I take the big hairy problem. So like, let's say for instance, someone isn't confident. Like, let's say for instance they lack self-confidence. I'll lay out the game plan for them, and I will tell them that we are going to tackle that problem in the next 8 weeks. Because it's like, you know, the carrot and the donkey analogy. You put the carrot right in front of them that makes them want to act. Like, we are going to literally solve this problem in 6 weeks. Can you imagine getting to a point where you no longer have to be self-conscious in the next 6 weeks?
So relating back to the diabetes thing, you'd be like, we're going to help you to reduce the risk of developing diabetes in 8 weeks. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's possible. I'm not a medical expert.
No, that sort of thing. That sort of thing. Whatever
General
they've said,
consensus.
you're like, I'm going to absolutely not.
Yeah, well, consequences.
Yeah, it's like if any of you coach, if any of you coach females and they're like, oh, I feel insecure about my body, I'm always putting jumpers on in the middle of summer, you know, whatever. You can literally turn. Obviously, you're not going to lie to them and say, oh, we're going to get you to lose 25 stone in the next 3 days. But what you can do is, obviously, if this is possible, you can literally say to them, we are going to get you to a point where you are not going to feel X, Y, and Z in the next 6 weeks. It's literally in touching distance.
It's really interesting to us because yeah, it's good. No,
Validation.
when you showed up that slide, and obviously the Earthquake thing, and then the bit after, like, I only ever on the court, I only ever go to like stage 1 or 2. I've never.
What's your close rate?
On the calls, like 60, 70,
What's the charge?
or 75.
Nice. You're going to close them off.
Cool.
Nice.
Good.
Good work. What was your question, by the way? I think you had a question. You were saying it's interesting, and I'm going
Yeah,
to
it's
go.
interesting. So, no, I was just kind of saying that I've never actually thought about delving that deep, because I would just think that, oh yeah, he wants to build muscle because he just wants to be jacked. Like, I would never actually think, oh, he wants to build muscle because he's, I don't know, like, for me, I just want to be jacked and look good.
Why? No,
I've just always,
right, let me
I've just always done it.
a bit of psychology here for you.
Yeah.
No one ever has a goal in their mind that is backed by nothing. Nothing. I wanted to build a big business because my father cheated on my mother, and I wanted to create financial abundance for my family. That's that. Everyone has their reasons for wanting to do something. You came here today. I mean, obviously I picked on him enough times. I'll leave you alone.
No,
But-
you're not alone.
but why did you want to come today? Like, why do you want to grow your business? And it's good to ask yourself these questions as well. Why do you want to do anything?
I like to achieve.
Why? Do you have a brother?
No.
Sister?
Well, half brother and half sister, yeah, but
Were you close to them when you were younger?
no.
Okay, no. What about parents?
Mum. Close to my mum.
Okay. Did they push you in school?
Not really.
Bro's giving you no.
But this
This
is why I asked you the rapport question at the beginning, because I often find that it helps frames to be able to ask some of those questions whereby you're able to find that, like, for example, an amount of rapport, knowing that they have kids or a checkered background or whatever, like, you can ask slightly more direct questions in order to uncover those elements of pain.
Yeah. So rapport.
It was just interesting to know why you do it that way.
So I'm going to bring it back to the doctor's office for a minute. Have you ever been to the doctors and they've asked you really private questions? Like, what's your sexual activity level? Or stuff like that. They're asking you the questions because they're asking them from the position of the expert, because they need to know this information in order to diagnose you. That's the route I like to take. I don't want to be prospects' friends. Like, I'm not there to be a friend. I'm there to help that person. So when you say about rapport,
And that comes from the framing at the beginning.
Yes. You can have your own approach to a sales call. Obviously, I personally wouldn't recommend being a prospect mates and like having a laugh with them, because there's no boundary, between client, business owner. Where was I? But yes, like I said about the 8-week thing and the road mapping, the future needs to feel so real and so compelling and so possible for the prospect that they have no other choice. It wouldn't make logical sense for them to not take action. Okay. And like I've obviously said, and we've been over, it does need to go a lot deeper than I just want to lose weight. Okay. And I just want to tone up and put muscle on. Yeah, but there's always something behind it. Always. Just the best way to think about it is think about yourself. Why do you want to do anything? If you're really self-reflective, why do you want to do anything? Why do you want to grow a business? Why do you want to get more clients? Why do you want to buy that car? Why do you want a Casio watch like me? Why? There's always reasons behind it. Okay. Don't ask me why I bought this watch. I just wanted one, and a Casio's good. So, yeah. Same steps here. Identification is number one. So, question I like to ask is: let's say we were able to wave a magic wand, and pro tip here: if you sell 3 months, if you sell 4 months, if you sell 5 months, if you sell 9 months, always use your leading offer as the timeline. So the people I close for, they typically offer 3 to 6 months. So if you, let's say for instance, your minimum is 5 months, you can always say, let's say we're able to wave a magic wand to the next, I don't know, 5 months, because it sets them in the frame of working with you for 5 months. Anyway, how would you want to see yourself, and what would you want to describe yourself as? So human beings naturally love stories. Everyone loves a story here. Everyone here like movies and TV? Cool. We love a story. Now when you ask someone to describe something to you, it gets them into that storytelling mode. And people will always want to describe themselves in the best possible light. So if you ask someone, how do you describe yourself, they're going to give you a lot more emotional leverage to obviously work with. Okay. Then step number 2 is the why. So why that specifically? Like why that very thing? Why not something else? What does that do for you? And what does that specific thing, achieving that specific thing, do for you that something else wouldn't? Why not put 5 kilos on a muscle instead of 10 kilos on a muscle? Okay, why 10 kilos specifically? And ultimately, what changes in your life when you achieve that? Okay, those are the whys. Step number 3 is the emotion part of it. What would it mean to become that person? If you were the person that is earning 50k a month, well, how would that feel for you? Waking up every single day, checking your bank account, it's loaded with cash. How would that feel? What would that mean for you? Like, how would it impact your relationships? How would it impact your relationships with your girlfriend, your kids, your partner, your family, your brother? What would that do for you? And they need to feel like they're looking at a future version of themselves through a thin layer of glass, so that they feel like their future is in touching distance. Okay, like I said to yourself just now. And obviously, I've said this time and time again, but goals are not just data. Right? Someone just doesn't randomly pluck 10 kilos out of the air. There's a reason behind it, and it always represents something. How am I doing for time? Okay, cool. So this is I'm not sure how many of you do this, but this is called self-selling. Now I personally like to get people to sell themselves. I don't like to hard sell people, like it's not in my nature. Like high pressure closing, not fun. Right. So self-selling is something that you can do on a sales call to get the prospect to obviously sell themselves onto your program, right? So at this point in the call, for us to be able to do this, we need to have known where they are, why they're there, where they want to be, and why they want to be there, to summarize. Now what we need to do here to get them to close is to enlarge the gap and force them to confront that gap. And this is where we get them to sell themselves and get them to realise that they need. Okay. Now, we need to establish 3 things. Now, this sounds counterintuitive as fuck. Sitting on a sales call and saying, why can't you just do this yourself to someone, is counterintuitive, but it is the most powerful thing to sell people. Every single sales call, I've got, I've actually got them in my room, but I've got like my notebooks of sales calls, and one of the questions I have in my notebooks is, why not do it yourself? When you ask that person that question, they're going to give you reasons why they can't do it themselves. Now, not only are they giving you reasons why they can't do it themselves, but they're giving themselves reasons subconsciously as to why they can't do it themselves. So internally, they're registering in their brain that they can't do it themselves.
It's sort of written down when you go into the call, so you can go through it.
Yeah, I borrow a piece of paper.
Yeah. It's not mine, but yeah.
So this is my notes. So those are 3 questions that I like to ask in sales call. So step 1, urgency. Why now? Why can't they do themselves? What's the consequence? Okay. They are important to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anyone wants to see that, it's there. But why now and why not later? That's number 2. which is consequence and urgency, and what happens if they stay the same, consequence. So those are the three things that we need to establish in order to get them to sell themselves. Now, them selling themselves doesn't mean they're just going to say, right, let me pay you now. It means that there's not going to be any resistance internally because they're going to be sold. Okay. Now, like I've said, asking them why they can't do it alone sounds very counterintuitive, but it is a fucking superpower. What it's going to do, like I've said, is confirm that they can't do it alone. It'll create self-doubt, and the doubt will build a larger gap for you. So the gap is the distance between where they are, where they want to be, and where they are now. The larger the gap, the more you can close. And also, how many of you have ever had the objection, I can do this myself in a sales call? Anyone? Anyone at all? You need to ask this question. Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you? So why are we on this call?
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said, establishing why now is going to pull out why they need to act now, and it's going to create a gap, more emotional leverage, and you can pull it back. Now, establishing consequences, like I've said, will establish fear once they realise how much the pain is going to compound if they choose not to act. And if they're not more afraid of staying the same, they are invested in the sale is dead. So the close. I'll wrap this up very quickly. So at this point, you don't need to convince anyone. We just need to present the actual next step, which is working with you. If you've done the rest of the call right, this is just going to seem very natural, and the prospect will know internally that this is the next thing to do for themselves. Okay. And I never really ask for the sale. I just offer the next step that's in complete alignment with everything they told me that they need, and I just go for it. Now, this is before giving the price, right? So what I like to do is I like to split a close up into two halves. So the pitch and the close. The pitch is obviously when you say, oh, we're going to do blah, 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 blah. At the end of every single pitch, and I do this every single call, I ask 3 questions. First one, would this be helpful? Second, why would it be helpful? And 3, finances aside, why do they feel like this is something that they need to start right away? Now, can anyone in the room tell me why I've asked those 3 questions?
Remove certain objections.
Which objections?
I think they have to think about it, whether they actually need to decide whether it's right for them or not.
Doubt.
Spouse.
Spouse objection.
Money.
Is it going to work for me?
Yeah. So I'll go into this in a minute. But you've got smoke screens and you've got objections. So smoke screens are like I need to think about it. Objections are I can't afford it. With what you said there, you said doubt.
Created the urgency.
Sorry.
And created the urgency.
Sort of.
Comparison against other competitors as well, essentially.
Yeah. So what this is, why I've asked these is this eliminates the logistical. I don't have time for this. Have any of you ever had that objection? By the way, I don't have time for this, or I can't fit this into my life. Anyone?
I do know the managed to eliminate that one.
Okay. So that gets eliminated straight away. Why would this be helpful? This is getting them to sell themselves. This is going to help me because blah blah blah, and they're giving you extra ammunition to close them. Okay. And then finances aside, why do you feel like this is I don't know why I said why there. Do you feel like this is something that you want to start right away? And the reason I ask this is because then we've got them to basically confirm, yes, it works for me because of this, and I want to start straight away. Yes. And then when we get into the price, if they give us any objections, we've got these 3 points of data to refer back to use to handle an objection. Okay? And then also, let me ask you this, right? So like let's say for instance, you go through all these questions, someone says, yes, we need to start ASAP, and then you drop the price. What has changed between then and after you drop the price? So that's the true objections. Then if they say to you, I need to ask my partner, it all boils down to money, and then you can handle it as per. Okay. Once you have the answers to those questions, drop the investment and stay silent. And then generally whoever speaks first loses. I'm sure you've all heard that before, if you've ever watched anything to do with sales. So, moving swiftly on to objections. I'm not going to go into specifics, I just wanted to cross over this. When it comes to objections, there are 3 kinds. Number 1, objections. Number 2, smoke screens. Number 3, hurdles. Smoke screens, I need to think about it. I don't make decisions on the spot. I need to talk to my partner. I'm shopping around. Okay? These are all smoke screens that the prospect is going to give you to hide and shield true objection from you. And what they say is never what they mean. So I need to think about it. I need to digest this. It's not fucking steak. You don't need to digest it. I said that on a call to a prospect the other day after the recording also. Anyone wants to see it? Ask me. All the smoke screen for the true objection. Okay. Hurdles. Sounds good, but I have to start on X. How many of you have that? Oh, I get paid on Friday. I have to start this after my holiday. I don't have time for this. I'm shopping around. They are simple hurdles, but easy to overcome. Now, I find the two hardest objections to handle in sales: I'm shopping around, and I need to ask my partner. Those are the two big ones. If you get anything to think about it, you can handle that quite easy, and obviously destroy that. Then the actual objections, I can't afford it. That's pretty self-explanatory because the number they have in their bank account is less than the number that they need to give you. Fair. We can find a way around that. Credit card, #Klarna. And then we've got, how will I know that this will work for me? Okay? Now, the true objection is either financial or belief related. What do I mean by belief related? It means that they lack belief in themselves or they lack belief in their ability to change. And then obviously the finances one is pretty self-explanatory. Okay? But the point of running the call the way that I've shown you today is to give us as much emotional leverage as possible to handle objections. And when I say emotional leverage, I don't mean to sound like I'm going to get onto a sales call and tear people to shreds. That's not the point of it. But obviously we needed certain pieces of information in order to sell to people. So, does anyone have any questions?
With the think about it one, we literally just be like, no, you don't need to think about it.
No, I never say that. I'm not a prick.
Direct, not blunt.
Like, I've had people say, like, that's probably the most common one I come across.
Okay.
I need to think about it.
Okay.
So then I'll try and handle it like, you know, what do you need to think about? Do you think you can't get results of the plan? And sometimes I'll be going through it for like 30 fucking minutes, and then at the end I'm just like, I actually can't anymore. So they'll be like, oh, I'll just.
Bro, just gave up.
I'll be like, oh. They'll be like, oh, I'll get back to you.
No, you won't.
No.
I say that.
Yeah.
I say that in sales class.
So the last guy that I had a call with a few days back, so I'll get back. I was like, okay, can you let me know by tomorrow? And he did, but I was like, he's just not going to sign up, is he? And then he was like, tomorrow, the next day, he's like, hi mate, sorry, but I can't sign up. So I stayed on it for a while trying to attack the thing, and I went through quite a lot of just thing that he was umming and ahhing, and I was just like, you say yes or fucking no, and so I didn't say that. But I don't, like, how direct can you really be? Because it's like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do in that situation? Do I leave it and wait for him to get back and actually think about it, or do I have to?
So what do they need to think about?
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So it all comes down to money. Right?
I said, what do you
I need to think about it. Always comes down to money.
Okay, yeah, you did say finance.
Every single time, right? So there's a very big difference between I need to think about it, objection, and financial objection. One just covers the other, right? So if someone says to you, I need to think about it, if you've asked, oh, by the way, that's my Instagram, if anyone wants to follow me. If you've asked, what are they? Okay. If you've asked that question, they have no leg to stand on, right? It has to be financial, right? So, you've asked this, they need to think about it. What is your name, sorry?
Chester.
Okay, Chester. So, obviously a minute ago you mentioned to me that you feel like this is going to be helpful to you because of X, Y, and Z, and you feel like you want to achieve this goal because of X, Y, and Z, and you want to start straight away. Now, obviously, I know that you said you want to think about it, which is completely fine, but, you know, do you believe your program will get you to where you want to be? Okay, why? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. So it doesn't really sound as if it's the program you need to think about. Would I be correct in assuming that it's more so the finances side of things? Yes, it is. Okay, cool. Not a problem at all. Completely understand that. When you say the finances side of things, like, what does that mean? Like, do you go for like upfront payments or monthlies or?
Monthly.
Okay. So where you could change, maybe, is an upfront and a split pay.
So what I said, because he did bring up, I remember now, he did bring up the finances, and to try and bring him on, I was like, okay, look, what we can do, no risk to you. If you don't get results to this plan, I'll give you your money back straight up. And then
What
that
did he
had,
say? What did he say to that?
he was on an R. He was only like, he was.
I think there's a certain.
Bro, you literally get your money back.
That's what I said. So, yeah,
That's literally what I said. I said, bro, you get your money.
That's what I said.
You either get in world class shape or you get your cash.
That
back.
is literally what I
And I'll
said.
give you 50 quid to go on the weekend. So, you don't have to say that, Pablo. Or you
I think there's a certain element of mindset of going into a sales school that if you go into it thinking you're trying to qualify that person out of your program,
Yes.
i.e.
Yeah.
you go in with the mindset like, are they right? And I think you touched on it at the beginning, but because that might just be a really bad client for you, because you might get that sale over the line, they may pay 1 month and then you're chasing them for money, and actually, I mean, the accountant just talked about ROI, etc. Like the amount of time, effort, energy you spend with that particular client or customer, is it worth it for that sale? When you can go and on to the next one and spend your time on that call. If you're having to ask that many questions, right off, you answer the next one.
Yeah. But also, what was the original about? Disqualifying people, wasn't it?
Yeah, qualifying out.
Yeah. Some people like that. It depends on you have to ask yourself, how badly do you need a sale? Firstly, did you really need that sale? And how much strain was that bloke putting you? Because the behaviour that he's showing now, and obviously I can go into this a bit more detail, but the behaviour that he's showing now will probably reflect in your programme. I've had people before who, when I had my appointment selling agency, they'd come to me and I'd be like getting a diagnosis of their current situation, and they'd tell me about having VAs and how the VAs were performing and this and this and this and this and this, and they would like really come across with stress. And I knew that if I took them on, they're just going to project that same stress onto me. So what I'm trying to get at there is that his behaviour on the sales call will probably dictate his behaviour in your program. And what you can also do as well is you can tie it back to the sort of person that they want to be. So like, let's say for instance, what was the guy's goals?
Just wanted to build muscle.
This is where discovery. Really
So I think it's get better at that. So
let's say for instance his goal is to become more consistent. Let's say for instance you work with high achievers, whatever that may look like. Wants to become more consistent, wants to become more confident, wants to become more like assertive, wants to lose weight. That means that in order for him to get to from where he is now to where he wants to be, he has to go through some level of identity change. Now, is him acting this way more in line with his current identity, which we've already established that he hates, or is it more in line with his identity that he wants?
I think that's the thing. I think
it's called identity free.
So I think he was quite happy with his current identity because he was saying, so he was essentially like, I want to build muscle, but he was like, how would this help? So I explained all how coaching would help, because basically,
do you see what happened there? He asked you a question.
He asked me a question.
You fell into it. What I would have said to him is, okay, I mean, I know how it can help. How do you feel like it would help? Put it back. You'll never catch me answering a question. I finish on a sales call. I always say,
and that's like the qualifier now, because he came at the end of the sector. It's like, well, you need to work. Why have you not built muscle yourself? You've got a gym. Why don't you go to it? You can get on ChatGPT, you can Google a training plan.
There's always a question in your mind that you want to ask in a sales call, but for whatever reason, people don't feel like they want to ask it because it's either rude, blunt, or direct. The first question that comes to your mind on a sales call, ask it, because it's normally the right one. That's my experience with sales. People said, I felt like asking him that. I thought that was a perfect question to ask. Why didn't you ask that?
And it's always the uncomfortable question that you don't want to ask. That's
the uncomfortable question is where the sale lies. All the time. You've got to be okay with having an uncomfortable conversation. Because you're there to help. Wrap up? Anyone else have any questions before I wrap up? One more, maybe half a question.
Yeah, we'll have a Q&A at the end. I think the Q&A session we might do some role plays.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry. You can try and close me.
Can do.
I reckon you can't.
Yeah. Right, thank you everyone.
From the
Quite later.
I had a call the other day and I could see the other I could see the partner. She's like, I need to speak to
Oh,
the
yeah.
partner. Bring him over. You going?
Yeah. Definitely won't be able to work.